Right now, a dog is watching you, not just glancing, watching, tracking your posture, your breathing, the small tension in your shoulders. It has a theory about you, not a thought exactly, but a working model, a continuous, updating assessment of what kind of creature you are and whether you're safe. Animals do this constantly. Every species that shares space with us has built some version of a framework for understanding what we are. And that framework has almost nothing to do with how you see yourself. You think of yourself as a person, a name, a history, a set of feelings and obligations. Animals don't have access to any of that. They read smell, movement, posture, routine, and energy. To most animals, you're not a person. You are a pattern. What that pattern means depends entirely on the species doing the reading, and the answer is stranger than you'd expect. Let's start with dogs, because dogs are the clearest case. They have been living alongside humans for somewhere between 15,000 and 40,000 years, depending on the study. That is long enough for evolution to actually reshape the dog brain. In 2015, neuroscientist Gregory Berns at Emory University used MRI scanning on awake, trained dogs to measure their brain responses to human scent. The scent of a familiar human activated the caudate nucleus, the brain's reward center, more reliably than the scent of a familiar dog. Think about that for a second. To a dog's brain, you are more rewarding than another dog, not just tolerated, preferred. Dogs know you aren't a dog. They can tell the difference, but they've folded you into their social world anyway. You are a pack member, upright, mostly hairless, poor sense of smell, confusing relationship with doors, but pack nonetheless. Cats are a different situation entirely. Cats were never fully domesticated the way dogs were. They domesticated themselves roughly 10,000 years ago in the Near East, moving in around grain stores that attracted rodents. The deal was mutual and loose. That looseness shows up in how cats perceive us today. Adult cats almost never meow at each other. Meowing is a behavior they developed specifically for communicating with humans. In 2009, Karen McComb at the University of Sussex recorded what she called solicitation purrs, a regular purr with a high-frequency cry embedded inside it that cats use specifically on human caregivers. Human adults rated these sounds as more urgent and more difficult to ignore than ordinary purring. The cats had learned to press a button inside human auditory instincts. They weren't asking, they were operating you. To a cat, you may be less a companion and more a resource with emotional levers. Now consider a different species, the horse. Built by evolution as hunted animals rather than hunters, their entire nervous system is tuned for threat detection. Forward-facing eyes mean predator. Direct approach means predator. Tense posture, sudden movements, held breath, all of it reads as predator to a horse. You have forward-facing eyes. You approach directly. You are by every structural signal, a horse knows, a predator. And yet horses can learn to trust humans completely. In 2016, researchers at the University of Sussex found that horses could read human facial expressions and remember them. A horse shown a photograph of an angry human face would later respond with elevated heart rate and avoidance behavior when it encountered that actual person. Hours later, even when that person was now calm and relaxed, the horse had filed you under dangerous and kept the note. That is not instinct. That is memory applied to an individual human face. Birds push this further. Crows hold grudges. In 2011, John Marsluff at the University of Washington had researchers wear specific masks while trapping and banding wild crows. Months later, people wearing those masks were dive-bombed, scolded, and followed by crows who had never personally encountered them during the trapping. The crows had passed the information socially. You were not just a threat. You were a described threat. A crow that has never met you might already have a file on your face. Ravens and parrots show similar individual recognition. To these animals, you're not a member of a general species called human. You are a specific creature with a specific record. Here's the part that gets genuinely strange. Wild animals that live near humans don't experience us as individuals the way dogs or horses do. They experience us as a category, and that category shifts based on what we actually do over time. In 2013, wildlife biologist Joel Berger published research on moose behavior in areas with and without human hunting pressure. Moose in hunted areas showed immediate flight responses to human presence. Moose in unhunted areas walked directly toward humans, Same species, completely different model of what a human is. The difference wasn't hardwired instinct, it was learned, and it spread through population behavior. The animal world updates its theory of us. Urban wildlife has taken this to an extreme. City raccoons, foxes, and crows have built detailed behavioral maps of human routine. A 2004 study by wildlife ecologist Stanley Garrett, tracking Chicago area coyotes, found that urban coyotes had shifted their entire activity patterns to peak at 2 and 3 a.m., the exact window when human foot traffic drops lowest. They weren't avoiding humans out of fear exactly, they were scheduling around us. You are, to an urban coyote, a recurring environmental obstacle with a predictable timetable. Not predator, not partner, a pattern to be managed. Marine animals add another layer entirely. Dolphins actively approach humans in open water. They investigate boats, swimmers, and divers with what researchers consistently describe as genuine curiosity. In 2019, a team from Murdoch University in Australia observed Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins returning repeatedly to interact with snorkelers across multiple dives. Not for food, not for any apparent material benefit. Just contact. Dolphins may be exploring a question that most animals never quite get around to asking. You are novel to them, strange, worth investigating. Octopuses go further still. In controlled aquarium settings, individual octopuses have been documented targeting specific human keepers with directed water jets, while ignoring others in the same room. Not all humans. Pui. Civic ones. Nobody trained them to do this. They were forming opinions. But here's what none of this fully captures. The way animals see us has been shaped almost entirely by what we do, not what we are. Fear, trust, curiosity, avoidance. None of it is a response to your interior life. It is a response to your behavior, your smell, your routine, your consistency. In 2022, a research team at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology found that chimpanzees with prolonged positive contact with human researchers showed reduced cortisol responses to human presence over time, not just with familiar individuals, but extended slightly toward unfamiliar humans too. Positive experience had begun to update the broader category. What you did had changed what you were in their model. Animals are not trying to understand your personality. They are not curious about your past or your intentions in any abstract sense. They are building a working theory of what you do, how you move, what your presence tends to mean for them. A dog builds that theory across years of daily contact. A crow builds it from a single bad afternoon. A moose builds it from what happened to the moose before it. And every day, without knowing it, you are handing animals new data. Not with your words, not with your name or your intentions, with everything else.